In arguably the most important matchup of day 2 of play-ins, we have powerhouse teams MAD Lions and RNG square off in a battle for contention over Group B. What's also interesting here is being able to see that these teams draft against each other as well, because both of these teams are relatively strong believers in their respective styles, and the drafting styles of these teams also reflect that. We've had just a bit of time for our meta to solidify, so the main thing with this game are the minor adaptations these make to pick out specific champions. It only takes a minor advantage in a certain matchup or a single unique pick to really throw the enemy team off right now, so let's see what these teams have got. If you enjoyed this video, would love a sub for more content like this. Let's hop into the draft. For the starting bans, MAD ban out Fiora, LeBlanc, and Caitlyn, while RNG ban out Draven, Hecarim, and Maokai. The two most interesting developments I've seen as each game has progressed in play-in so far are the amount of Fiora bans that teams have been throwing out right now, and the rise in priority that Maokai has gotten in drafts. Games have been more chaotic, and more often than not, top laners often see themselves in the lonesome in the side lane before they enable themselves to aid in other plays. Fiora is currently in a state where she basically has no bad matchups at all, and this allows her to basically get blind picked and then just have free reign over every single matchup she wants. Being able to be blinded, do well in laning phase, and scale well into the later phases right now is clearly an issue in a champion like this, so it ends up getting banned more and more. And touching on Maokai, teams have been realizing just the amount it brings to the table in terms of its overall raw stats. Maokai's gotten some pretty insane buffs in Time for Worlds, and what makes him pretty crazy right now is his ability to flex into basically whatever role he wants. Top, jungle, support. By picking him, you're ensuring strong team fighting and stability in lanes in different ways, and it's becoming more and more of a problem if you're able to lock in Maokai and basically reveal nothing about your draft and show none of your cards. MAD start up the draft with the B1 Aatrox, which is pretty standard at this point. RNG quickly match up with the Jax, which has been coming up as the counter pick that teams have been opting for since Fiora is often banned. It's a decent matchup and definitely secures a winning side lane with time, so the pick makes sense. MAD just need to be cognizant of the weak team fighting the Jax brings to the table, so they can try to take advantage of that wherever possible. RNG also take Graves, which seems to be quickly becoming one of the best in slot picks for jungle right now. MAD respond in B2, B3 with Taliyah Kai'Sa, which is probably a little bit ambitious at this point in my opinion. I don't think Kai'Sa is likely strong enough to the point where you can simply blind her and succeed like in previous metas. She is strong, but I think it needs to be relatively clear that the enemy team composition will be weak to her targeted damage, since her overall damage output is technically on the lower end of some of the ADCs we have in the meta. Picking it here pretty much tells RNG to pick champions that prevent Kai'Sa from functioning well, and then it's hard for her to actually do her job. The Taliyah is also an interesting pick on paper that is meant to work well to enable Kai'Sa here. Taliyah is a facilitator champion that uses her roam timers to actually enable her teammates super well, so I believe the intent is to run that with the Kai'Sa so that she can fare well in lane. The only caveat here is that this leaves subpar matchups possible on both of these ends. So this starts with the Galio pick on R3, which I honestly didn't think about at first, but makes a lot of sense in this matchup. The mindset here is similar to the Galio versus Twisted Fate matchup, in which TF inherently gets more wave control matchup, but Galio kind of doesn't care, pulls up to the fight anyways, and then kind of stat checks everybody in the fight, especially in early game. The same mindset applies here, as Taliyah will be able to get wave control, push out, and use Weaver's Wall to get to places. But RNG is just going to send Galio down anyways, have him ulti down, send a fight, lose a wave, and just go for it pretty much, so it's not going to matter that much. Moving on to phase 2 bans, RNG basically know to ban off forward champions thanks to the Kai'Sa reveal on B3, so Vi and Poppy are the bans here. MAD opt to remove from the ADC pool with Tristana and Xayah. These are two picks that do a decent job at mitigating Kai'Sa's engage, but I think this just means that MAD has to invest a lot of resources into clearing the way for Kai'Sa, and I don't really like how this is the way the draft is playing out. We get to R4 and RNG pick another ADC that can maximize the engage from Kai'Sa in the Aphelios. Having red white guns in these core fights where the enemy is looking to really close the gap on you can make it very hard for Kai'Sa to function, especially when paired with the Galio ultimate to create space as well. For B4, B5, MAD pretty much have to commit to their engage anyways, so they lock in Nautilus and Trundle. I think right now, Leona probably fares better at locking down immobile ADCs, and if you're committing to playing this aggressive over comp and the enemy shows Aphelios, this can be a great opportunity to pick champions like Jarvan or even Lee Sin in order to punish this immobile ADC. Trundle is great by all means and he secures great matchups, but if your goal is to delete priority targets, you should pick champions that should really enable that. RNG round out their team fighting with a Leona pick of their own, and now we have a draft on our hands. On paper, the fights are not that bad for both sides. Both MAD and RNG have pretty good team fighting and agency in their team comps, so the main differences are relatively subtle. RNG is slightly more focused on playing the front to back with their Aphelios, countering whatever engage that MAD can bring to the table, and then finding their own angles when possible. I'd say that MAD actually has some pressure to overperform in these fights right now, because RNG has brought some tools that somewhat make it harder for their team to function, and their commitment to this on B2, B3 really punished them in the end. I rate this draft 60-40 for RNG because of this. As always though, hopefully this draft analysis was helpful to you guys, and I will catch you in the next one. Stay fresh.